Okay, this is part 2 of week 5, and we are going to be discussing the stages of writing and spelling development. Our objectives with this lecture is to explain the development of writing and spelling, review diagnostics for writing and spelling. We will have discussed this in class, but I will briefly explain it in this lecture as well. And also discuss the Curie 5 word list. Again, this is something that you will see in class, or you did already see in class, but I will review that. Okay, so let's start off with the development of writing. Children acquire writing competence by writing. So it makes perfect sense. You acquire something by actually doing it. However, this doesn't happen without a supportive environment. So similar to reading, we want our children to be surrounded by a literacy-rich environment. So we want them to have role models where they see people reading, they see people writing, and they see people doing these things with a purpose. Children acquire knowledge in a fundamentally oral way from the language that surrounds them. And when they see others around them writing for functional purposes, they will model their own behavior accordingly. Okay, in your Lipson and Wixon, it goes over several stages of writing development. First, they begin with scribbling, differentiate between drawing and writing, concept of linearity, uniformity, symmetry, placement, left to right motion, and top to bottom directionality. Development of letters and letter-like shapes. Combination of letters, possibly with spaces. Writing known isolated words, their own names, letter sound correspondence. Writing simple sentences with use of phonetic spelling. Combining two or more sentences to express complete thought. Control of punctuation, periods, capitals. Form of discourse, stories, informational text. Oops, let me go back. So, caution, because I don't want you to think that students will just go from 1 to 3. Oftentimes, you will see a combination of things. So, a student, or I should say a child, maybe when they're first experimenting with writing, they might have some scribbling, but also drawing as well, or they might be scribbling from left to right. So these do not necessarily happen in isolation. There can be many of them together. And as you move towards here, this is where you ideally would want most of your first graders to be. So control of punctuation, form of discourse, stories, informational text. So it doesn't mean they're writing elaborate stories, but they know that there is a purpose for their writing. Okay, development of orthographic knowledge. So orthography is the correct sequence of letters in the writing system. Even more words can be acquired when they are explicitly examined to discover the orthographic relationships. Okay, so basically this is saying right here, you would use your orthographic knowledge to notice that the letters C, T, A does not spell cat. So you're recognizing the correct sequence of the words. And then here what it's basically saying is that you would want to explicitly examine orthographic relationships in words. So if you were doing a word study, maybe with primary students, you would examine words in word families so that they can recognize chunks of words, because if they're able to recognize chunks of words in single syllable words, then later they would probably, if they're proficient, be able to see chunks in multisyllabic words. Developmental progression occurs for all learners in a continuum. All right, so going to miscues, reading, spelling, errors, and writing. Spelling errors across children are not random. So if you notice, if you look at some of your spelling tests of your students, you will notice that there's some errors being made. And it's not because they didn't study their spelling words, but oftentimes there is confusion with them with phonics knowledge. And that's one of the reasons why we should be giving a spelling inventory test, because it can really provide a window into the child's developing word knowledge. And so once you give that inventory, you can analyze the results and see where they might have some confusion or some deficits. So going back to me, I have an intervention group, and I gave them all the spelling, the Words Their Way spelling inventory test, and I grouped them based on their needs in phonics instruction. And so what I noticed is I have one group that is really struggling with short vowels, and I have another group that is struggling with long vowels, specifically the A blank E and I blank E, things like that. So again, errors are not random. There's a reason why they're making those errors. Okay, so errors can shed light on what phoneme students can or can't encode and their developing word knowledge. The best predictor of kinder children's success in phonology was their score on invented spelling measure. So those of you who aren't familiar with invented spelling is when a child is, I guess you can say, maybe experimenting with the alphabetic principle. So as they start to acquire more like patterns of language, and as their linguistic knowledge grows, you will see that reflected in their spelling ability. So there was a good example in your Lipson and Wixon on page 325, and it shows a writing sample of a 6-year-old where there is just many consonants, some vowels, but the student or the child has no spaces between her words mostly, and it says, "My brother and sister are standing by my house," but you can see that she's already trying to spell different words, but it's her invented spelling based on her alphabetic knowledge. So using diagnostic information from spelling inventories can help plan effective instruction in phonics, spelling, and instruction. So a spelling inventory is just another measure that can provide you rich information on your student, and where you can start with phonics instruction. Okay, the development of spelling knowledge and skill. Prephonetic spelling, so no sound symbol relationship present. So here a child might draw a circle and maybe say that says ball. Maybe there's just shapes and they're telling you it says something. So this is a very early stage in spelling. Early phonetic spelling, so little phonetic information represented. So here I gave you an example. So dear grandma. So the child is saying it, and then this is how they're representing that phrase. Phonetic letter names, so readable spellings but incorporate letter names as sounds. An example of this is if you had a word kite and the student spelled it K-I-T. So here you can see that they don't have a deep knowledge of some of the vowel patterns, and you'll probably see lots of error with consonant combinations, such as consonant digraphs. So they might have trouble with maybe like shout because it has the S and the H and the O and the U. So they would definitely have difficulties in that area. Transitional within word pattern, masters short vowels and recognize need for long vowel markers. So here they're making many errors with those different word spelling patterns. And here they're starting to master the short vowels, and they know that there's a need to make, there's a pattern usually to make a vowel long. So here they would have spelled kite incorrectly. Here they would spell it correctly. It's also really important to note here that even though they may have spelled kite right, they may be applying that rule to a lot of other words. So maybe the word was let's see, let me think of a word. The word fail, like F-A-I-L, they might put F-A-L-E. So again, they're recognizing that there are patterns. However, they might be applying that pattern to other words where it's incorrect. Okay, so depending on where you're looking, many researchers have kind of categorized spelling going into different stages. But here is a comparison with the Virginia Spelling Studies and words their way. So then we have the prephonetic, emergent, semiphonetic, letter name alphabetic, phonetic, same here. So this would apply over here as well. Transitional, within word pattern, correct, and then we have syllables, affixes, and derivational relations. So we're going to focus on this area, and you'll notice that within these stages, you can have like early emergent or middle emergent or late emergent, and these also apply to these areas as well. So my intervention group right now, I have my first group is letter name alphabetic, but they are in the early letter name alphabetic, where we are focusing on briefly reviewing short vowels, but also mostly discussing, I think it was blends. And then we have my other group who are in the late letter name alphabetic, and we are studying digraphs, blends, and long vowels. Okay, so kind of give you a close-up and a description of what these stages look like. We have the emergent, and so it kind of gives you a age, grade, and where it's covered. If you have the Words Their Way book, if you don't have it, I highly recommend that you get it. And it basically kind of lays out what you might see with your student spelling, which I really like, and that can give you an idea of where they would be at. So if you didn't give your student a spelling inventory like in class, you might use this as a other alternative. Okay, so again, within word, and then we have the syllable affixes. Let me go back over here so you can kind of see the differences. So here, the word is mine, so you would have just an M. Here they have just the initial and final consonant, and then here they have the I, but do not recognize that there needs to be an E to make it long. So initials, initial and final, and then a vowel in between. Here within word, you are seeing that they are understanding that there are patterns, but they may not get them correct. So nail, nail, rope, rope, cry, cry. So you may have students that do get them correct, but it's not very consistent. Okay, and then we have syllables and affixes. So the word is hopping. So here they put hoping. So they really haven't learned how to add those affixes or the rules of some syllables. Okay, and the last stage. So we have here opposition, criticize. Okay, and here they would strongly recommend studying base words and roots and looking into morphology. Okay, the synchrony of literacy development. And I will stop here so we can go on to our part 3.